Welcome back to Coffeesodes, everybody. It's episode 41.
Wow.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Kelly.
And today we're going to be taking another deep dive.
Yeah.
So before we get started, if you want to follow along with us today, the details for the research we're going to be looking at are in the episode description. All right, so are you ready to get into this, Kelly?
I am, absolutely.
This one's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard of, like, a dog that can remember the names of its toys for years?
Like even if they haven't seen them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty crazy.
That's amazing.
So there's this research study that was done about gifted word learner dogs.
Yeah.
And they tested their long-term memory for names of objects like toys.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so it's basically like the canine equivalent of someone who's like a vocabulary whiz.
Right.
So we're going to deep dive into this today.
Okay.
So first off, what exactly are these gifted word learner dogs?
Well, they're pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
They're these dogs that have this like really rare ability to be able to just learn the names of tons of objects.
Okay, so it's not like just your average dog that's like, oh, ball. Or
Right. It's not just like sit and stay.
Yes.
It's way beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did the researchers like test that these dogs could learn?
Well, there was this really interesting study where they took 5 of these dogs
Okay.
and taught them the names of 12 different toys.
12 toys?
12 toys.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they basically had their like doggy vocabulary lessons.
Yeah.
And then they took the toys away and waited 2 years.
2 years.
2 whole years before they tested them again.
That's like longer than some internet trends last.
Right. It's
Wait,
just,
so
yeah.
what happened after the 2 years? Like, did they even remember their own names, let alone the toy?
You would be surprised.
Yeah.
4 out of the 5 dogs could actually remember at least 3 of the toys by name.
Right.
And some even remembered 9.
Wow. That's wild.
It's really cool.
Okay, so even after 2 years, they could still look at the object and be like, oh, that's whatever.
Right.
That's crazy. So it wasn't just a fluke or something.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't just a fluke.
Yeah.
This is like suggesting that dogs can actually form long-term memories
Okay.
that link an object in its name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild.
It is wild. So how is that even possible? Like, what's going on in these dogs' brains?
Well, we don't know all the answers yet, but researchers think that it could be similar to how memory works in humans.
Okay.
Right.
Like, we have long-term and short-term memory.
Right.
So are you saying that, like, maybe these dogs are, like, forming these object-word associations in their long-term memory?
I think it's a very compelling idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really suggests that their memory systems are more complex than we give them credit for.
Yeah, because, like, when a kid learns language,
Yeah.
like, hearing it over and over again.
Repetition is key.
Yeah. So, like, maybe these dogs, it's like the same thing. It's just like, oh, I've heard this word.
And then it solidifies in long-term memory.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So do you think this is like something that all dogs could do if they had enough training?
That's a good question.
Or do you think it's like some dogs are just born with like
Right.
a better memory?
That is a great question. And I don't know that we fully know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It's probably some combination of nature and nurture.
Yeah. Like those kids, you could just pick up languages like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, is it talent?
Yeah.
Or is it just...
Or is it just like crazy amounts of work?
Right.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So like imagine if we could harness this in more dogs. Like what could we do?
Yeah.
Like in terms of communication and training and stuff?
It would be insane.
Yeah.
If we could figure out what factors make these dogs gifted, then we could maybe totally change how we train dogs, how we interact with them.
This is kind of blowing my mind.
It's really cool.
Yeah, we talk to our dogs, but like, imagine if we could have actual back and forth conversations.
Right.
Well, what would we learn?
What would they tell us?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to ponder.
Yeah, over your next cup of coffee.
Exactly.
So that wraps up part 1 of this deep dive, but we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be right back to talk more about these dogs and what it all means for communication between dogs and humans.
Welcome back. So we've been talking about these dogs.
Yeah.
And their amazing ability to remember words.
Yeah, it really is like unlocking a hidden language in dogs.
Totally.
But what about all the other dogs out there?
Right.
Like my dog can barely remember where he buried a bone 5 minutes ago.
Right.
So does this research mean like there's hope for my dog?
This research does tell us a lot about how dogs think and learn.
Okay.
Just like people have different ways of learning.
Oh, well.
Dogs do too.
Okay, so like some dogs are good at language.
Right. Some dogs are good at like agility or
Scent detection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like figuring out your dog's learning language.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's go back to those dogs for a second.
Okay.
Like, is there something physically different about their brains?
That's what researchers are trying to figure out.
Okay.
It's probably a whole bunch of things mixed together.
Okay.
You know, genetics, maybe how they were raised, the type of training they got.
So you're saying like these dogs are super rare?
Yeah.
It's not something you can just teach any dog.
Exactly. It's like finding a 4-leaf clover.
Yeah, like 1 in a million.
Yeah.
So then why can they do this? Why did this ability evolve?
Yeah. Why would a dog need to remember the names of 100 different things?
Yeah, like did ancient dogs really need to know the difference between a stick and a branch?
Right. Well, maybe not in those exact words.
Okay.
But think about it.
Yeah.
What if dogs could understand complicated instructions?
Okay.
Especially dogs that lived and worked with humans.
Yeah.
Like imagine a dog that could fetch you a specific tool.
Oh, wow.
Or herd sheep based on what you told it to do.
Okay.
Or even warn you about danger using words.
That's amazing.
Right.
So they're tapping into something that most dogs have lost.
That's a really cool theory.
Yeah, it is. So we've talked about how these dogs do it and why they might have this ability.
Right.
But what's next for this research?
Well, this research gives us a whole new way of looking at how dogs think.
Okay.
The more we learn about how they learn and remember things, the better we can train them.
Okay.
Give them good environments.
Yeah.
And build stronger bonds with them.
So we're like decoding the secrets of the dog brain.
Exactly. And who knows what we'll discover next.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll have dog-human translator.
Oh my God.
That let us have real conversations with our dogs.
What?
Imagine understanding their thoughts and feelings.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But even without some crazy technology.
I think we can still use what we've learned to communicate better with our dogs now.
Absolutely.
You know, pay attention to their cues.
Yeah.
Figure out how they learn best.
Right.
Use positive reinforcement.
Exactly.
This has been amazing, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's really changed how I think about dogs.
Me too.
We started talking about dogs remembering toys.
Right.
And now we're talking about this whole new level of understanding and connection.
It's wild how these things connect.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. I'm ready to go home and have a deep conversation with my dog.
Me too. Even if it's just me talking.
Yeah.
It's still worth it.
But before we finish up,
Yeah.
I think there's one more important thing we need to talk about.
What's that?
The ethics of all this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, whenever we start getting into animal intelligence and learning more about what they can do, we have to make sure we're doing it ethically.
Like, we don't want to exploit these dogs.
Exactly. One of the big worries is that people might take advantage of them.
Yeah.
You know, they're so unique that someone might try to make money off of them.
Yeah, like put them in a show or something.
Right. Like force them to do all these tricks just to entertain people.
Right. We have to remember that these are living beings.
Yeah, they have their own needs.
Yeah.
And limits.
It's like we can't just push them too far.
Right.
Just because we're curious or think it's funny.
Exactly. And another thing we have to be careful of is not setting unrealistic expectations for other dogs.
Yeah.
Just because some dogs can learn hundreds of words doesn't mean every dog should be able to do that.
Yeah. It's like we shouldn't get upset if our dog isn't like reciting Shakespeare.
Exactly. Every dog is different and we should appreciate them for who they are.
Yeah, whether they're loyal or playful or cuddly.
Exactly. We got to celebrate all the different kinds of dog intelligence.
Yeah.
And remember that their vocabulary doesn't define them.
So how can we use what we've learned from this research to help all dogs?
Yeah.
Not just the ones who are like super learners.
Well, I think the main takeaway is understanding how dogs learn.
Okay. So it's all about finding the right approach.
Right.
Being patient.
Yeah.
Using positive reinforcement.
Exactly.
This whole conversation has been amazing, Kelly. We started with dogs remembering toys.
I know.
And now we're talking about the ethics of dog-human communication.
It's wild.
It really is. So to all our listeners out there, go home, give your dog a hug.
Yeah.
Maybe try teaching them a new word and just appreciate the bond you share.
Absolutely.
You never know.
And even if your dog isn't a vocabulary whiz, they're still your best friend, your furry companion, and a source of so much love and happiness.
So cherish those moments.
Yeah.
Celebrate their unique personalities.
Yeah.
And never stop learning about these amazing creatures.
It's a journey.
Well said, Kelly. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in.
See you next time.
Until next time, keep those coffee cups full and those minds curious.